In the quiet town of Crestwood, a single, brutal mistake is about to ignite a war no one saw coming, and the most feared kid in school just declared it on the one man with the power, and the hidden past, to burn his whole world down. The first bell at Crestwood High hadn't even rung, but the hierarchy was already in motion. In the main hallway, a universe away from the nervous freshmen and sleepy teachers, stood Jason Jax Volkov. At 17, he was less a student and more an institution. His father's construction empire bankrolled half the town, and Jax ruled the school with the casual, cruel entitlement of a feudal lord. This Monday morning, his target was a man in a slightly too large, off-the-rack brown suit, facing a locked administrative office door, fumbling with a key ring. To Jax, the man was a beacon of weakness. The rounded shoulders, the old-fashioned leather briefcase, the helpless posture at the door, it screamed, substitute, probably some new vice principal or district lackey. A perfect pressure release valve for the irritation simmering in Jax's gut after a weekend of his father's disdain. His crew, a trio of loyal sycophants, snickered as they approached. The hallway traffic instinctively slowed, then diverted, a human current parting around a coming storm. The man, Dr. Alistair Finch, finally found the right key. The click was soft, but to him, it was the sound of a fortress gate opening. This office, with its stale smell of old carpet and lemon cleaner, was his new command center. It was a far cry from the orderly chaos of a university physics department, or the high-stakes tension of the Pentagon briefing rooms he'd reluctantly grown accustomed to, but it was his now. A promise to a dying sister, to look after her grandson, Leo, a quiet boy with artist's hands and a target on his back here at Crestwood, had brought him to this unlikely place. He was here to observe, to quietly ensure Leo's safety until graduation, a low-profile administrative favor from an old friend in the district. The principal was on emergency medical leave, Finch was the interim, a ghost with a title. He didn't hear the footsteps stop behind him. He was mentally reviewing the day's schedule, the fragile ecosystem of a public high school he needed to understand. The shove was so sudden, so physically jarring, it wasn't just a push, it was an erasure of personal space, a violation of fundamental physics. His briefcase flew from his hand, papers erupting in a fluttering cloud. His glasses skittered across the linoleum. He stumbled forward, catching himself on the doorframe, his palms stinging. "Oops," Jax's voice was a lazy drawl, dripping with mock apology. "Didn't see you there, old-timer. You might want to watch where you're standing. This is a busy hallway." His friends laughed, a sharp, hyena-like sound. Finch slowly straightened up. He did not turn around immediately. He took a deliberate breath, centering himself. In his previous life, a physical assault like this would have resulted in the perpetrator being neutralized by unseen personnel before he could even blink. But that life was buried. He was Dr. Alistair Finch, mild-mannered educator, now principal. He turned. His eyes, a pale, watery blue behind the retrieved and now slightly bent glasses, settled on Jax. There was no anger there. No fear. It was a look of pure, clinical assessment. He noted the boy's expensive sneakers, the defiant posture, the genetic echo of the local bully magnate, Victor Volkov, whose photo Finch had seen in the town's business journal. "You are correct," Finch said, his voice quiet, unervingly calm. "It is a busy hallway. Your name?" Jax snorted. "He wants my name. Cute. It's Jax. You'll want to remember it. Now, how about you pick up your, whatever this is," he toe-nudged a spread-eagled report on school lunch nutrition, "and get out of the way of actual students." Finch knelt, methodically collecting his papers. "Thank you for the introduction, Jason. Report to the main office at the start of second period." He stood, opened his office door, and stepped inside without another glance, closing it with a soft, definitive click. Jax stood frozen for a second, then laughed, a bark of disbelief. Did he just? Whatever. He's nobody. But the encounter left a peculiar itch. The man's eyes, they weren't right. They weren't the fearful, appeasing eyes he was used to. Inside the office, Finch placed his briefcase on the desk. He logged into the computer, pulled up the student database, and found Jason Volkov's file. Disciplinary notes were a scrolling list: fights, intimidation, vandalism, all mysteriously resolved, charges dropped, witnesses recanting. The digital footprint of his father's influence. Finch's lips pressed into a thin line. This was the environment Leo endured. He typed a few commands, initiating a standard background check on the family, a precaution, he told himself. Then he sent a discreet, encrypted message from a private server: asset is in place. Situation is active. Stand by. He was here for Leo, but a bully had just kicked a hornet's nest, unaware it was made of titanium. Second period came. Jax did not report to the office. He spent the period in the courtyard, holding court. The defiance was the point. By third period, an announcement echoed through the classrooms: Jason Volkov, please report to the principal's office immediately. The use of his full name was a tiny, public rebuke. Grudgingly, Jax went, planning to stare down the feeble substitute. The scene in the office was not what he expected. Finch sat behind the desk, not with the bluster of a disciplinarian, but with the quiet patience of a scientist observing a specimen. You were told to report. You did not. That is insubordination, layered on top of assault. Assault? Jax laughed, sprawling in the chair. It was a bump. And my dad's lawyer would eat you for breakfast. Who even are you? The sub. I am Dr. Alistair Finch, the interim principal. And for the next 3 months, this is my school. Finch steepled his fingers. You have a choice, Jason. You can serve 3 days of in-school suspension, starting now, for the push and the defiance. Or, you can choose to have this incident formally reviewed by the school board, with a recommendation for expulsion. Given your record, and with my testimony as a victim of battery, I suspect even your father's influence would be strained. Jax's sneer faltered. No one had ever spoken to him like this. Not a teacher, not a cop, no one. The man wasn't yelling. He was just stating facts, and the facts were a trap. You're bluffing. Finch opened a folder. Your father, Victor, is currently seeking the zoning commission's approval for the new Riverbend subdivision. A public scandal involving his son violently assaulting a new principal, a PhD, no less, would make for very interesting headlines in the local paper, wouldn't it? Not the community spirit the commission likes to see. Finch's gaze was unwavering. He had done his homework in the 2 hours since the shove. A cold trickle of something unfamiliar, dread, slid down Jax's spine. How did this nobody know about the Riverbend deal? You can't do that. The suspension is in the West Wing Annex. Now. Or I pick up the phone. Your choice. Jax chose the suspension. It was, he told himself, a tactical retreat. But the story spread like wildfire. Jax got owned by the new suit. The quiet, weird new principal had not just stood up to Jax Volkov, he had beaten him without raising his voice. A strange new energy crackled through Crestwood High. The next day, Finch began to make small, precise changes. He reassigned hall monitors, placing them in Jax's usual territories of operation. He quietly accessed and cross-referenced the school's security camera feeds, noting patterns of intimidation. He called in Leo, his nephew, under the guise of a welcoming interview for new students, and slipped him a brand new, top-tier drawing tablet. Your mother said you wished for one, he said gently. Leo, a boy who had learned to be invisible, was stunned and terrified. Possession of such a prize would make him a target. Keep it in your locker, or in this office, Finch advised. Use it in the art room. Your talent should not be stifled by fear. Leo left, confused but with a fragile spark of hope. Jax, meanwhile, was fuming. The suspension was a humiliation. His father, when he heard a sanitized version, had merely grunted, "Don't be stupid. Focus on the deal." The dismissal was a second shove, from the other side. Jax decided on escalation. If Finch wanted a war, he'd get one. He targeted Leo. He'd seen the shy new kid with the sketchbook, and now he'd seen him coming out of the principal's office. A connection. Perfect. In the art room after school, Jax and his crew cornered Leo, demanding the tablet. When Leo refused, clutching it to his chest, Jax grabbed it and, with a vicious smirk, snapped it over his knee. The crack of plastic was like a gunshot in the quiet room. "Oops," Jax said again, echoing his words from the hallway. "Another accident. Tell your principal friend he should buy you sturdier toys." Leo, shattered, reported it not to Finch, but to the art teacher, who filed a report. Finch read it that evening, his blood running cold. This was his fault. He had drawn a line, and the boy had stepped over it to crush the very person Finch was here to protect. The clinical detachment he'd maintained evaporated. This was no longer an administrative problem. It was personal. The twist came the following morning. Finch didn't call Jax to his office. He went to him. He walked into Jax's fourth period economics class, interrupting the teacher. His presence silenced the room. "Jason Volkov," Finch said, his voice carrying in the dead quiet. "You are suspended. For the destruction of school property and the intimidation of a student. Not in school. Out of school. Property and the intimidation of a student. Not in school. Out of school. For 1 week. Your parents have been notified. Gather your things and leave the premises immediately." Jax stood up, his face a mask of fury. "You can't. My father." "Your father," Finch cut in, his tone finally showing an edge, like a scalpel, "is currently en route to a meeting with the Federal Trade Commission regarding bid rigging allegations on his interstate contracts. I suspect a school suspension is the least of his concerns today. Now. Leave." The class gasped. Jax felt the world drop out from under him. How? How could this pathetic man know these things? The FTC? No one knew that. He stumbled out, his bravado shattered, replaced by a yawning, terrifying confusion. The real war began that afternoon. Viktor Volkov, a mountain of a man with a temper as vast as his fortune, stormed into the principal's office without knocking. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he bellowed. Finch looked up from his computer. "I am the principal. And you are trespassing on school property. You may request an appointment through the office. I'll have your job. I'll have you run out of this town." Viktor spat. "Doubtful," Finch said. He turned his monitor around. On it was a series of financial documents, property deeds, and a blurred photo of Viktor with a known county commissioner at a private hunting lodge. "Your Riverbend proposal is interesting, Mr. Volkov. Particularly the environmental impact waiver you supposedly obtained from Commissioner Dale. Funny thing. The Department of Environmental Conservation has no record of it. A forged waiver on a federal wetland, that's not a school board matter. That's a felony." Viktor's rage turned to ice. He stared at the screen, then at the mild-mannered man before him. "What are you?" "I am the man who is going to give you a choice," Finch said, leaning back. "You will pull your son from this school and enroll him in a private, disciplinary academy of my choosing, I have a list, for the remainder of the year. You will make a substantial, anonymous donation to the school's Art and Technology Fund. And you will ensure Jason writes a full, public apology to Leo Mendez and pays for the destroyed property. In return, this data," he tapped the screen, "goes nowhere. And you can explain your zoning issues to the commission on your own merits. Refuse, and by close of business today, this information will be with the FTC, the DEC, and the editor of the state newspaper. Viktor Volkov left the office pale and quiet. The king had been checkmated in 6 moves. The final, dramatic twist played out at a school assembly called that Friday. The gym was buzzing. Rumors were epic. Jax was expelled, his father was under investigation, the new principal was a secret agent. Finch took the podium. He looked out over the sea of faces, finding Leo's nervous one in the crowd. A school should be a sanctuary for learning and growth, not a kingdom of fear, he began, his voice amplified and firm. This week, a line was crossed. Not just rules, but basic human decency. That ends today. He then did something extraordinary. He called Jax Volkov to the stage. A tense murmur rippled through the crowd. Jax, looking hollow and defeated, walked up, a piece of paper trembling in his hand. Under his father's terrified orders, he read a halting, but unequivocal, apology to Leo and to the school for his behavior. He announced his immediate transfer. The silence was absolute, then broke into stunned whispers. But Finch wasn't done. And to ensure that the harm done is repaired, Crestwood High's art and digital media programs will be receiving a $50,000 grant, courtesy of an anonymous community benefactor, to foster the talents of all students. The applause was thunderous. Leo, in the crowd, cried quiet tears of relief. After the assembly, in his now legendary office, Finch received one final visitor. It was a stern woman in a severe pantsuit from the State Department. That was, theatrical, Alistair, she said. Using operational protocols for a schoolyard bully. The director is not amused. The asset was secured, Finch replied, packing Leo's new, even better drawing tablet into his bag. The hostile element was neutralized without official exposure. The mission parameters have been fulfilled. I'd call it efficient. You were supposed to observe, not engage in economic warfare against a local businessman, she sighed. But the results are acceptable. The Volkov file has been interesting to certain people for a while. Your intervention moved things along. She left. Finch looked out his window at the students flooding into the parking lot, free for the weekend. The quiet new principal had done what he came to do. He had protected one boy. And in doing so, he had accidentally freed an entire school. He allowed himself a small, dry smile. It was, all things considered, a satisfactory first week. Before I get back to crafting more tales, I need to ask you something. We're building a community here of people who love a story that turns expectations upside down. If you want to be the first to see what happens next, make sure to subscribe. It's the best way to make sure you don't miss a single twist. Now, I'm curious, where are you watching from? The reactions can be so different. Let me know in the comments what part of the country you're joining us from today.